On Tuesday afternoon, the Biden administration had Donald Trump arrested. It was a pretty big news story. You may have seen it. Just before 9 p.m. that night, as part of its coverage, Fox News ran two live video feeds next to one another. On the right, Donald Trump addressed his supporters in New Jersey. On the left, Joe Biden spoke at an event for the Secretary General of NATO in Washington. Beneath those videos at the bottom of the screen, Fox's banner read this way, quote, "Wannabe Dictator speaks at the White House after having his political rival arrested." Those words were up for less than 30 seconds, but the effect was immediate.
Good afternoon. This is Seraphim Hanisch, American in Exile, reporting from Moscow. I'm walking through the between place for the Seraphim 1 microdistrict, which you can see behind me, and we are walking into what I believe is called the Seraphim 2 microdistrict, which is newer, and it is in front of me. Not terribly exciting, but you can take a look. This is a building not being finished right now, and these are buildings that have been finished. You can see it's pretty complex. This stuff took several years for them to actually build. There were significant construction delays. In fact, these buildings were in skeleton form when I first moved here in 2016. However, there was a period of time where there was no money, apparently, and the concrete shells just kind of stood there. They looked very ugly compared to this. What you're looking at here is mostly facade. When they go up, they look like this. But in the last year or so, I guess they found money, they finished these things. They seem to be pretty nice apartments, and now people are buying them. And as I said in one of my other episodes, when you buy one of these, you get a concrete shell, and then you outfit it yourself. So each of these will probably end up rather customized according to the whims of the person who buys it first and remodels it first. So let's talk about some of the stuff that's going on. As you saw in the beginning of this, I played a clip from Tucker Carlson's episode 4 of Tucker on Twitter. And he shows how some very enterprising individual at Fox News went out with a bang using what they call the Chiron. We often called it the graphic when I was at Russia Today. It's a place where you can put a banner graphic that sort of highlights the main points of a story that is being told. And so somebody put their Wannabe Dictator arrests chief political opponent, right? And of course that was Joe Biden, that is the wannabe dictator, and the chief political opponent is Donald Trump. And so this person that was running the banner display did this, and it stayed up for about 27 seconds before somebody reacted to it. But that's all that was needed. Yeah, it's all that was needed. What an impact. I remember working on that same kind of device for RT when, in several situations, when President Putin was speaking at the ceremony celebrating the accession of the 4 new Russian regions following the referendum last fall, and also with times when they had the General Assembly of the United Nations, and we had to follow the speakers like Sergei Lavrov and other significant speakers. I used to get on the Chiron and work very hard to come up with short, punchy, summary statements for whatever was going on. And so my hat is off to the person who did this at Fox. I really hope we get to find out who this is, what his or her name is, and what that experience was like, because that was truly epic. That person did journalism, even though Fox News itself is not really doing journalism much anymore, as they continue to try to rotate their or adapt their coverage to becoming an anybody but Trump GOP supporting network. And you got to think about what that means. Anybody but Trump means no change, absolutely no change. I like Ron DeSantis very much. I think he is a good. I think the rhetoric that's passing between President Trump and he in this presidential campaign is a bit regrettable, to be honest with you. I know the way Trump fights, and I think he certainly needs to do that, but I think it's regrettable because President Trump endorsed Ron DeSantis. DeSantis won the governorship of Florida, where he has done a fantastic job. And it seems to me that in a more logical world, it would be a preferred thing for Trump and DeSantis to be a president-vice president ticket so that DeSantis can learn how to do all the things that President Trump does so that he can continue it for another 2 terms. However, it doesn't look like it's going that way now. It might come around to doing that later. It's the grand game of snipery that's very regrettable in American politics. I have to say that, but it has happened in years past, and it's probably going to happen again. Trump and DeSantis do together make up the 2 by far strongest candidates in the Republican Party for the presidency. And I agree with Dr. Steve Turley's assessment that were it to be that DeSantis became the nominee for president, I would certainly vote for him. I would do that too. Because he has a chance of pushing back on the stuff that the elitists are doing, but he isn't Donald Trump, and I think that this is going to be the biggest theme that we have to look at, especially in this talk. In the United States, we talk about a lot of the times the competition, snipery, bad blood, arguments, political divide between Republicans and Democrats. And this is the way we've been used to doing it for a very long time. It has certainly been the thematic material for the Fox network ever since it became the big player in the cable news industry. But this isn't really what we're up against anymore, and I think that is becoming extremely apparent. What we are up against now is really the permanent elitist people, and what I mean by that is people who have found their way to elected posts in national offices, who think that their job is to kind of do whatever they want, and that whatever they want must be what is best for the nation, regardless of what the citizens of the United States, who are, for the most part, their constituents, what the constituents think. So this is certainly not how the United States is supposed to run. It is a representative republic, which means that for any given population of people, they elect a representative to represent their wishes. The representative goes to Congress if it's a House member, or goes to the Senate if it's a Senate member. While the Senate terms are longer, and while the Senate is supposed to be sort of the elder statesman class of representation, they are still people that represent the wishes of their state, while the representatives are usually responsible to represent the wishes and desires of a much smaller constituency in most cases, especially in states with many, many representative districts like California or Texas. And so the whole idea is that we send these guys to D.C. because they are supposed to represent our wishes, our interests, and our needs for wherever we happen to be. And it's not always the same. For example, people in New York City or San Francisco or Los Angeles or heavily urbanized states such as New Jersey are going to have a different set of priorities about what they think is important to them. And there are many reasons for that. One reason is simply the virtue of having a large population in a small area. Then people think differently because you have to do a little more cooperation with each other in order to survive. But in states with large rural populations, the needs of a farmer, the needs of small town America, are very, very different than the needs of city Americans. So our representative system and eventually as it's manifested in our electoral college is designed to try to bring some balance to that. But it doesn't work when the elected representatives simply dismiss their constituents and do whatever it is they want to do. And when they start acting like elites and running for term after term after term and getting voted in for term after term after term, so that we don't even think about it anymore except when their names come up on the ballot every couple of years. This is a problem that is, it was feared by the founders of the United States, and now it has come to pass. And it's really, really difficult to find any kind of reporting in any major network that says something other than the government exists to take care of us. This is not why the United States government exists. Now, you might talk about that for Russia. You might talk about that for Great Britain, the UK, or for many other countries, but they don't have representative republics. They aren't the same, okay? And the mentality of the people is different. I'm not saying it's better or worse, but it's different. And part of the American experiment was based on the idea that we, the people, are going to be the decision makers for ourselves and for our country, and that the people that have the most power in the United States are the individual citizens, and that we elect people to kind of take care of the borders of the country, to take care of making sure it's safe from attack, and a bare minimum of support just to keep the country together. That's how the United States was founded, and it is certainly not that way anymore. It is powerfully institutionalized with more or less an idea that the president is now the ruler of the country and that the Congress sort of co-rules or makes decisions for us, whether we like it or not. And it's going to take a lot of work to get out of that mode, and I'm not sure if it can be done without a revolution, quite frankly. So I have a paper. I'm trying to be organized. We have Joe Biden, who has really presented himself in very stunning ways over the last couple of years. There was the Red speech that he did not so long ago that was really where he spent most of his time ranting and raving against the evil MAGA Republican, that MAGA, Make America Great Again, Donald Trump supporters, that this was the biggest threat to the United States that anybody could imagine. And, he had them speaking against this very dark, deep, hellish red or almost purple backdrop. And actually, in perspective, one of the things that came up, you may remember, was how one of the networks subtly tried to rebalance the color so that it wasn't such a deep, dark, satanic-looking red and into something more of a lavender. But think about it. How much better is that? We've got Mr. Biden having this huge confab of sexually perverse people, one of whom is a man who put implants in his chest and flashed the camera at the White House. And I listened to the person speaking later, and you gotta think, like, what is going on with these people? Why do they all sound the same? This man sounds like he's on helium. He's like, oh, I was just feeling what it was like to be inside my body, and I was just having joy over that. Like he's got helium in his. Why? Is it a fad? Is it something that happens when people do the necessary brain damage to themselves to mutilate their bodies? Do they actually, is there a physiological response that makes them sound like that? It's really ridiculous. So anyway, we went from the red dictator to the lavender dictator, and it's kind of looking back at what happened this week, I think that's kind of prophetic, because now you've got the pride president, an old 80-year-old man who seems to think that it's okay to do this, and everybody's, to be honest with you, I thought it was really in poor taste that these people place sex or some twisted form of sexuality as so important that they need to be exhibitionists on the White House lawn. There was somebody that I heard a comment about this, we don't celebrate, we don't do celebrations of heterosexuality. We don't celebrate family sex. We don't celebrate, mothers and fathers making babies. We don't do that. And heterosexual couples do not go on the White House lawn and strip and flash the camera there's a sense of decorum. There's a sense of what is decent living, and that those things that, my kids don't need to see, if those people are going to do what they're going to do, fine, go do it in your own privacy, but why do I have to see it? Why do I have to basically keep any kind of broadcast media off because I don't know what my kids are going to see next, right? It's really extraordinarily selfish. And that's part and parcel of the kind of people that these folks are. They are radically selfish. They are literally out of control navel gazers, to the point where they don't even know what to do with what's between their legs anymore, quite frankly, and it's disgusting. And the guy who is acting as the chief executive of the United States is acting like it's a good thing to condone these people, and that what they are doing is actually something that they could call love, and it is just the worst. It's an insult. It is a really, really big insult, and it's pretty sad that Mr. Biden is actually so mentally affected that he can't even see this himself. Either he is a really screaming, loyal ideologue to the left, or he is mentally deficient and being walked all over. And I really think it's probably both, and it's very difficult to tell where the line is. I know he agrees. I know he agrees with what's being done. It's very clear. But it's very difficult for me to see him being somebody who thinks independently on his own, like whenever he sits in his basement or wherever his basement is now, probably 3 levels below the ground level in the White House. When he sits there and thinks, what do I need to do with the country today? All right, I know. You know what? I really like homosexuality. I like perversion. In fact, I'm going to invite some people over there to do stuff like that to me, because I really want to experience it. You think he's doing that? I doubt it. But he is just a mental pushover, because these people can give him some lines about how right this is, and it goes along with Marxist ideology and progress and stuff. So, he's all in for it. It's pretty regrettable, and it's difficult for regular folks like us to understand that we are still really the vast majority of people in the country, because we're getting just loads and loads of this stuff pumped out of the news media. I have to take issue with Greg Gutfeld, I love his shows, but I think there's a real problem with him and with Fox, because I know this decision must be coming down from the Fox executives to use preferred pronouns for these transgender idiots, because so this person thinks he's a girl, and so we're going to call him a girl. We're going to aid and abet his lie. And it's really regrettable that somebody who is as smart as Greg Gutfeld and a lot of the people on his program, that they're really, really smart people. Honestly, they're very, very good. But their management, I think, is pushing them to do this. And while I do perceive that there is a bit of a pushback within Fox, that even the same Gutfeld, I think that given a chance he would vote for Trump again, and he will support Trump again, and several of the other people will. I think Hannity still will, and I think that Jesse Waters still will. But the push is on. You know, watch Fox for the next 6 months, and you'll see this shift. Everything is made to aid and abet the idea that the shift needs to be anybody but Trump, and they're not giving him much coverage. You can see that already. You have to go to really independent sources to get coverage, like on how President Trump talked about his reaction to being arrested, and how the charges against him are completely spurious, and that why is he being selected to be charged with many, many charges of mishandling documents when he alone can use the Presidential Records Act to declassify anything he wishes. Now, I know there's some scuttlebutt going around about saying that when he was subpoenaed to give documents, this is one that I think Barr, former Attorney General Barr, said that Trump should have given the documents up when he was asked and then subpoenaed to have them back. Okay, fine. But that is what we have there with Mr. Barr is quite a change, because he was doing a fairly good job as AG, and now he's like turned against Trump, and it's a very radical turnaround. So it's very sad. It's actually kind of sad, because Trump lauded him when he brought him on board, and Mr. Barr was very supportive of President Trump. He's a notable voice for Christianity and religious freedom and democracy. And how things change when it becomes politics. Anyway, so let's look at a couple of other stories. One of the other ones, the UFO story, seems to have collapsed. Now, there was a very interesting bit after, I think it happened around the same time that I reported the last bit of the UFO story. And there was a story about a family in Las Vegas who reported seeing an 8 to 10 foot tall creature, humanoid, but not human, in their backyard after a light coming out of the sky, which was caught on police camera, came down over Vegas. Now, I'll tell you my impression of this. I think what came down over Vegas was a meteorite. The green color is kind of a giveaway, as well as its speed. It looked like a bolide. It is not consistent for me with the trail of any kind of spacecraft making an entry into the Earth's atmosphere, and certainly not towards landing in Las Vegas. So that's piece number one. Piece number two is that there was a video that was released that claimed to have the missing information, because the original report has the police cams images blocked when they try to go into the backyard of the family's property, where they keep a lot of equipment, citing privacy concerns. And so this video came out that said, that on it said, here's what was really there. And they show a very strange looking humanoid-like creature with a tail. Okay, it had a tail. And it was crouched behind a fence, or near a fence, and it was looking around, and it seemed to be very startled by something coming close to it. Certainly the image is rather freaky looking. And it had my attention, but then I took a second look at it. The original report, it took a while for this to gain traction. The original report was May 1st of this year. And you can see that because the policeman's body cam shows that date. But the camera showing our friendly creature in the backyard is dated May 26th. Oops. I don't like fraudulent stuff. Okay? That's how you detect propaganda. You just look at what you're presented. People are sloppy. You know, when they do something like this to show propaganda, to try to display propaganda, you got to look carefully. Let me acquaint you with a couple of other tricks that they do. Fox does this, but every network does this. When let's take the Ukraine, let's take the Trump arraignment story. One of the things that was done this week was a video clip of Trump Force One, President Trump 757, with his name on it, landing at the airport. And it's a long approach, and a long approach, and a long approach while the reporter's going on and on about this and that, about Trump and the arraignment and facing the judge and all that kind of stuff, and you see the plane land. The plane landing doesn't say much. Neither does the other video that I saw of the same plane later taking off. Okay, that's one. Another one is when you have war coverage of Ukraine, and you will see some tanks, a fighting scene, some soldiers, and then maybe a fourth scene. Each one is about 5 or 10 seconds long, and then it just rotates and goes back to the first one, and it's on a loop. It's video filler. It makes it plays on the fact that the viewer is not really very attentive. But the idea is all you have to do is give them some sort of visual information. Remember the phrase, a picture is worth 1,000 words. Well, if you give people the right pictures, then they will tend to believe anything you want to tell them. So we had this alien-looking kangaroo creature, or whatever it was, hiding behind a fence, and they run the same sequence through like 2 or 3 times, and then there you go. But any discerning viewer could take a look. It took me, I had to see it the second time before I caught it. So, I mean, it takes being aware, and it takes deliberate effort. So the second time I looked at this thing, I noticed that the dates were different. Okay? Also, here's another one. The standard understanding of extraterrestrials is that they are naked. Whatever inhibitions we have as Earth people, whether they are given to us by God, and Adam and Eve discovered that, after they ate the fruit, they realized they were naked, and they got leaves to clothe themselves, and then later the Lord gave them skins to clothe themselves. Well, I guess that just didn't happen on other planets, because it seems like all the other aliens are naked. Says who? Right? Says who? So there were some tropes used to try to support the story. And while I cannot be sure that there was no landing for these people, there are certainly these 2 major pieces of really bad journalism that would seem to indicate that the story is a hoax. And that's too bad, because if it's true, it's the story of the century. It's the biggest story since Christ's coming. Okay? Not bigger, but the biggest. Okay? As I said before in the last video that I did about a week ago, this whole bit about aliens, for me, is neither here nor there, religiously or otherwise. If they exist, it would seem that according to the Gospel of Mark, there is a good argument that they need to receive the gospel just like anything else, because they are creatures, and they are creatures made by God, and so they need the gospel just like every one of us. Pretty interesting proposition. And it may or may not be applicable. But it isn't really a big deal if it is, and it isn't a really big deal if it isn't. That's kind of where I am about that. But the story about UFOs is so interesting that it kind of does it a disservice, even despite all of the claims that were made by a whistleblower that seems to be reputable, that the United States has about 12 different exotic craft, that they have bodies of the pilots of these craft. They seem to shy away from talking about extraterrestrial. And I think I have an idea about that. It's going to sound really strange, but based on the behavior that has been reported of UAPs in the more recent years, a lot of these craft are seen around bodies of water. They are able to move through the water at supersonic to even reportedly hypersonic speeds, if what Tucker Carlson said one day is actually correct, if he didn't misspeak, and he usually doesn't misspeak, which is a very remarkable property, because water tends to resist things moving through it. The fastest we can get an aircraft carrier to do is about maybe 50 knots, perhaps. That's probably flat out. That's probably a classified speed. That's not very fast. The Russian military claims that its Poseidon torpedo can move through the water at 1 to 200 knots. And that's enormously fast for passage through water. No submarine can match that on either side, so far as I've ever heard. So these things being able to move through water at 2, 3, 5 times the speed of sound is truly remarkable. But who is to say that these things are not Earth resident, but maybe they live in the oceans? Who knows? I mean, it's very interesting. Nobody really knows. It's not even known if there's any truth to any of this at all, but certainly we are seeing these things, and we're seeing them in military places. We're seeing them in war zones. We're seeing them over military bases. Now, I live in a peaceful city. This is in Moscow. I have not yet seen one. The sky is a big place, and I don't spend all my time looking at it or looking for spacecraft or aircraft or anything like that. But let's put it this way. Here's a little tidbit about life in Moscow. It's maybe a little off topic, but maybe not. Air traffic over Moscow is severely restricted. It is always severely restricted. So, and that is, the reason is simple. It's the capital city of the Russian Federation. So it has 3 major airports, all of which exist at a significant distance outside of the city limits. But it also has 2 or 3 other slightly smaller airports that serve it, and those are also located outside the city. So when air traffic comes to or from Moscow, it never flies over Moscow. The only time that you ever see planes flying over Moscow under normal circumstances are when we have the air parade during Victory Day, or the practices that come a few days before it. And that's it. And those planes come, they fly a route from local air bases, and they go over the center and then fly somewhere else, and that's the end of it until next year. So where I live is in the south central area, south central district in Moscow. And we are close enough to one of the major airports that I do see some planes come by on approach or on departure trajectories. Fewer now since the war started, because so many airlines decided not to fly to Russia anymore, but we still see them. And they take paths that are average, they're predictable. Once you've seen one airliner take the same path, you'll see other ones take the same path. So our skies here are relatively quiet. They're even more quiet now because presently, after these recent drone attacks, there is an ordinance in effect that consumer-level drones or any kind of drone flying is not to be done for at least 30 days from the time that we had the incident a couple weeks ago where a couple of drones came in and hit a couple of buildings and were also brought down by air defenses outside the city. So our skies are pretty quiet. I would say that if there were exotic craft, they would be easily noticed because there isn't supposed to be anything in our skies at night. But nothing ever happens because it's Moscow. Very peaceful place. So, the last part about the UFO story is also this sort of, it's more about the propaganda, the way that the information is being delivered or not delivered, that serves to diminish the impact of the story. Now, I honestly do not think that we are in a situation where if an alien spacecraft made a grand entrance and landed with full network coverage, I don't think it would cause any panic. We've had too much Star Trek and too much Marvel and Star Wars and all that kind of stuff. I think the reaction still would be more like, what took you so long? Because, why are we seeing this now? But then that is also actually part of the whole propaganda line. Why is it now? Other civilizations exist. Their history is not in any way tied to ours. So why would we see them now or not? And of course, there are records of ancient pictograms from the Bible, from other things that suggest that there have been other things seen at different times by different people in different places. So the one aspect of this is the slow walking. Like we had this kind of a push a week ago with a whistleblower, the Las Vegas story, the way that the story kind of caught hold on major networks, including Fox, but now it's dying. And one of the videos that came out this week was a video featuring a gentleman by the name of Michio Kaku. He is a Japanese physicist, and he is a TV personality. He's known to be, I don't know if he is by any means a world-leading physicist. He is a physicist. That's really all I know. I have no idea how good he is. But he is well known, and he is a TV personality, and he's good on the camera. And so his talk about extraterrestrials that he gave in a video was interesting, but it presented nothing new. And I think the effect of that was to kind of blunt the story and make it go away. And essentially, there is nothing to see here. So it seems that that's where we are. It is a curiosity. It seems to have come and gone. Maybe in a few weeks there will be another, maybe in less than a few weeks, there will be another revelation if they're really trying, if the media and the elites who control it are so beholden to their idea that they've got to slow walk this thing to us, then that's what they will do. We just have to watch and see. So, the next story I want to talk about is this, and this one really aggravated me. Alexander Christoforov of the Duran did a superb report, as he always does, yesterday, or the day before yesterday, and I saw it yesterday, on Thursday. And he was talking about a Wall Street Journal article, which I also found, about how the United States is sort of clearing the way to send depleted uranium shells for use by the Ukrainian armed forces in the present summer offensive. Why we call it a counteroffensive, I don't know. I guess strictly speaking, they're trying to push back on the Russians who have taken 20% of their territory. So this development was brought up some while back, and it prompted a warning from President Putin and from the Russian government that this should not be done because this would be a red line in the conflict. Depleted uranium is an exceptionally dense metal. I did some reading on it. It is 1.5 times as dense as lead. And so it's used for armor-piercing rounds. If you shoot it at something, the shell is going to go through whatever you shoot it at. I also learned that the M1 Abrams tanks were, at least at one point, intended to have a partial cladding of depleted uranium, I guess to help stop depleted uranium rounds from penetrating it if somebody fires them at this thing. So, but there are also a lot of surrounding stories about health concerns. Now, the only thing that is being spoken about on major outlets about depleted uranium and health effects is that it can cause kidney problems. That is what I kept reading. It may cause some kidney problems, but there is no direct consequence. However, there is apparently there is disputing information based on the use of these arms in Iraq that would indicate that the effect on people is much, much worse than just occasional cases of kidney problems, but some really, really awful things. So but the fact is that this is tantamount to an escalation. It's an escalation made by NATO in their proxy war against Russia because they are not winning. In fact, the last 10 days or so of activity has shown very little of any kind of territorial gain on the part of the Ukrainians. And where they have gained a little bit of territory, it's a little bit offset because the Russians are also reported to be gaining footholds of a little bit of territory. Now, not that this conflict is about Ukrainian territory. It's not about that. But at least not for the Russians. For the Russians, it's kind of like, send them at us and we'll just grind them down. Our job is to demilitarize Ukraine. So if they want to throw everything they have at us, let them. They can throw everything they have at us and we will just destroy them, and that will be us accomplishing our mission. That's fine. That's what we're here to do. So, but for Ukraine, it's about, one of their generals was talking about, or their leaders was talking about, just we're going to kill Russians wherever they live. So if you're a Russian living in the United States, I guess you better watch your back. If you're a Russian citizen, if you're a Russian person in San Francisco, New York, Chicago, Denver, you better be careful because there might be some Ukrainians around that are going to go and look for you and take you out simply because you're Russian. What is this? How is that anywhere justifiable by Americans, by American leaders? This whole thing of what Lindsey Graham did the other day in that video, referring to either directly or obliquely that killing Russians is the best money that the United States has ever spent by supporting Ukraine in their mission to do so. It is one of the worst things that I can ever imagine somebody saying about anybody. We had that in World War II. Granted, we had that where, it was kill Japs, kill more Japs. I remember those posters, and I remember reading about that stuff. And it, was it needed? Well, I didn't live in the 1940s, so I really can't say. But as a person living in 2023 Russia, 21st century as an American, with nuclear war as a possibility, that where I am sitting right now could vanish in the blinding flash of light, and I would be gone as an American, bombed to oblivion by my own country's weapons. And we're talking about killing Russians. I find that personally offensive. I find that absolutely offensive. I am not a Russian citizen. but my wife, my children are, my wife is Russian, my mother-in-law is Russian. All of my friends here, there are a few Americans and Canadians that are here, but most everybody else I know is Russian. They are my friends, they are my colleagues, they are people that have opened themselves up in their country to me and to my friends and have always welcomed us. And then we go, our leaders think that they can go and say something like that. I think that Lindsey Graham is a snake. He goes around and talks about how he supports Trump, but then he is also ostensibly, talking about, not ostensibly, talking about such things as this. When Trump said he's going to end the war in 24 hours, and I believe he has a plan to do it, and I believe that it could be successful. But if Lindsey Graham, you better watch if Trump gets nominated and he still talks about things like that he's going to end the war between Russia and Ukraine in 24 hours. He's not going to do it through military means. Everybody knows that, I would think. Forgive me for saying everybody knows that. That's a good propaganda line. I don't want to do that. But if you study President Trump and his policy style, his foreign policy style, he doesn't warmonger. He doesn't do that. He'll raise the rhetoric, like what he did with Kim Jong-il. He raised the rhetoric higher and higher and higher until, without firing a shot, until it reached a certain point, and then he made an overture to meet the guy. And so they met a couple times at least, and they communicated, and they actually became friends. Now, and here's the stupid media saying, look, Trump is friends with dictators. Yeah, Kim Jong-un is a dictator. Fine. Sure he is. But I'm not sure what's better, a live dictator or a dead world. And if you have nuclear war, you're going to have pretty much, at least in the northern hemisphere, you're going to have a dead world. Doesn't anybody read anymore? It's not going to be good. And the elites may think that they are getting what they want, but they will be living in a radioactive wasteland. And I think they will realize it's their error too late to do anything about it. I don't know. Because if it happens, I probably won't be around to watch it happen, at least not from this side of the veil, right? I would rather not have that. I imagine you guys would rather not have that either. Life is fun, it's fun to live life, it's fun to do things, and I really don't need to be nuked by some elitist, stupid whims. Thank you very much. Who's with me? Do you feel the same way? If you do, say something about it. Do something about it. Get these people out of Congress. Get these people out of positions of power. Turn off their broadcasts. Stop supporting them. Support other people that actually don't want to do stuff like that. And see, this is it. I think there are a lot of people, and myself included, tempted to talk about what the real problem is. And so this week when I was thinking about it, I was thinking about what I said earlier, that it's the rule of an elite, or a group of people that think that they are elite, that they think that they act like they are above reproach, that the laws that apply to you and I as common citizens don't apply to them, and they often have money and influence to be able to do more things more easily than I can, or than most of us can. I can't fly around the world at a whim. I don't drive a fancy car. In fact, I don't drive any car at all these days unless I rent one. I don't have property. I don't have, a lot of things. But and some people do. And some of the people that do live surprisingly normal lives and are grateful and happy. I think Elon Musk is one of them. He's been downsizing his living lifestyle for a long time. And he's, you know, sometimes the richest man on earth, and he's doing that. You know, he seems to be driven by something better than being an elitist. And then there are other people that are driven by some kind of illusion that they're going to somehow live forever, I guess, and that they have the right to make decisions about the whole world and about other people's lives, and that they're not accountable for that. And I think that is heinous. I think that is absolutely heinous, and that it needs to be stopped. The United States as a country has had its difficulties in history with making such decisions. The attitude of the settlers towards the Indian tribes is a big example of that. But it is not the only way that people reacted. There were a lot of people that did not react that way. There was even a time in the history of what we used to call Indian Territory, which is basically now the state of Oklahoma. Laura Ingalls Wilder records in her book, Little House on the Prairie, how her family and her father and her mother had an existing prejudice against Native Americans, against Indians. Her mother flat out hated them. Her father didn't, but he had an attitude that they were a conquered people, and that they were going to eventually be pushed west, because that is what always happens, and that's the end of it. And Laura disagreed, and you can see that as a little girl. That's not right, and he wouldn't hear her talk about it any further. Well, yes, we had that, but so did every other country in the world, and especially in those times. You know, at some point or another, this was the MO for most civilizations. You know, the strong civilization always overwhelms the weaker civilization. Whether you want to be deliberately out to conquer is one thing, and that has also been the case throughout history. Russia and the Soviet Union often talk about their history as being very non-aggressive, and I think to some extent that is true, but all of this land that belongs to the Russian Federation now did not always belong to the Russian Federation. This country has not existed forever in its present borders. It has grown, it has increased its size, and it has done military conquests of some sort, sometimes not to the best ends. During the Soviet times, that is also true. Everybody has done it. And the borders that we have now, obviously, aren't the final borders in the world. We like to think that they are, but they aren't. And that has been made manifestly aware, or manifestly shown in Russia currently holding territory that comprises about 20% of what was formerly Ukraine. So it's not going to end. But we can be realistic about it. We can also say, look, it's still wrong when somebody presumes to play with other people's lives as though they have no meaning. And that is what is going on here. And it's happening at different levels. In Ukraine, it's happening because people like Lindsey Graham and Joe Biden and other people, President Zelensky, think that the lives of the Ukrainian citizens do not mean anything. So they can all leave or die, because their leaving just leaves more for maybe, more wealth for the people that survive, and their death does the same thing. And it also supports their purposes of trying to defeat and marginalize Russia and get rid of it as a power in the world. So the end justifies the means for these people. The trans nuts think that their flashing body parts, fake or real, on national television is justified, even though it is a severe assault upon the values and lifestyle of traditional families. But the end justifies the means, because I want to feel comfortable inside my own body, and I feel so happy about it. Right, it's much old malarkey. It's terrible, but people do it. I'm going to try to open this door, see if I can go in one of these buildings. Because I think I can. Let's see. Okay. Yeah. Looks like there's somebody in there. Well, that's something I got in that building. Hardly ever happens. Usually these places are pretty closed up. So what do we do? So this is the current idea, that there is this an attitude shared by a fairly substantial group of people, that they think that the rest of us are of no meaning, and that they can do whatever they want, no matter what it does to us. As an American, this is an offensive attitude. I can't speak about what anybody else anywhere else thinks about it, but as an American, I find this reprehensible. You know, my dream is still to have a place, lots of land, and neighbors that are very far away, and to live independently, to raise my family in the fear of God, and to interact with people when I want to, and to not interact with them when I don't want to be free of government, not to be under anybody's thumb, but to serve God. That's what a lot of Americans wanted. That's what they wanted when the United States was founded. And sure, there's some bad apples, but there are a whole bunch of people that are just like me. So this is us against them. And the them, I don't think it's probably not really a wise thing to say that it's this one group or that one group. You know, you get a lot of these conspiracy theory folks talking about it's the Jews, it's the whatevers, the Rothschilds, or whoever. You know, those people may all share that attitude in common, okay? They probably, to be honest, I bet you that a lot of them may have this attitude, but they aren't some sort of unified cabal working together with each other to achieve their ends. They probably each have their own. I don't know. I don't know any of them, and I can't speak to it with anything else more than a guess. But the fact that they are there is, you know, it's okay for them to have that attitude. But I think for a very long time, people like us have been very patient. We have tolerated a lot of their antics and found ways to get around it or go under it or ignore it. And we're still doing that. You know, there's some interesting little tidbits in the news to that end, even from liberals, like the liberal company Starbucks is reported to have banned the Gay Pride Month displays in many of their stores around the country. And there seems to be some sort of a backlash that says, look, we're not going to mark this in any one way or the other, because it's, why do that? If I go all pride, then I'm going to attract the ire of one people. If I take a conservative stance in a public way and say I'm not going to do it, then I attract the ire of the real screamers. You know, conservatives don't scream about it as much, but there are more of them, and they do have money, so they just simply stop doing business with you and spread the news now, which is great. But you know, the best way to deal with the issue is to make it no issue. That was the decision that some Starbucks shops apparently made, and that appears to be happening in a number of places, according to reports that I saw this week, which is actually the bounce back. It's the coming back to the middle. You know, there was a saying that I learned a long time ago from a person who was a dear friend who is probably not living this the way that she was when she taught me this. What you focus on grows. And if you focus on the good increases. If you focus on the bad increases. If you focus on what's wrong, what is wrong increases. If you focus on what is right, the right increases. There's a lot of truth to that. Some of it is attitudinal. And even when things are going very, very, very wrong, and which in many cases they are in the world now, look around. It's a pretty summer day. You know, I'm not much for big apartment blocks, but it's quiet. It's peaceful. The people that live here, the people that will come and live here, are here to make their lives. There are a whole lot of them. I will never know anything like 1,000th of their names, I'm sure. But they're just people. And, you know, people are okay. People are okay. Not everybody's a lunatic. Maybe just people like me who make video news reports and circle around on stories over and over again. All right, so let's see. There are a couple of last few points. I actually made a paper. You see that? I was trying to be organized. And I think we actually covered most of this, but I'll say a little bit more about real life in Russia. This is a story that I often talk about because I'm doing it. There is a lot of collaboration in the art world here, especially in music. I had a meeting yesterday with a friend of mine who is a composer, conductor for a choir. He's a very highly classically trained musician. He's from Riga, Latvia. You know, well, officially, Latvia is not happy with Russia because Russia. But he is here for a month to see about whether or not he can earn enough money singing and doing gigs here to set up shop here and live here. He likes Russia. And he would be a fine addition to the musical community here. He's very, very good. So, you know, I'm kind of in the very interesting position of not being a professional musician by education, but working very, very closely with them and working as one in some ways myself as a musician, as a conductor, and as a producer, a recording engineer. And so for me, you know, being a producer is one of the best things, because when you're a music producer, every project that comes is fascinating. It has its own sense of fascination, and that my job is to make it be the best that it possibly can be. And I like that job. I like that kind of job because it means that I get to enjoy everybody's talent and learn from it. You know, so this is a wonderful thing. So anyway, I'm here as an American. I'm working with my friend who is from Latvia. We are negotiating with a Russian record label with another group of people for a major musical release, hopefully that will come out this year. And, you know, I have a wonderful family. I get to learn a new language and add to my experience of the world and broaden it. I've never considered myself much of an international traveler, but I spent a little time last night counting how many nations I've actually been in for one reason or another, and the count is presently 9. You know, not so long ago it was only 2 or 3, and I never really fancied that I would be one to up and relocate from the United States to someplace completely on the other side of the world. So, I mean, there's a lot to be grateful for, and we can remember that, you know, to be grateful. So we had also Russia Day. This was a holiday on Monday. It didn't really register too much for me because I don't really understand it. I thought it was something like Constitution Day, but it isn't. It is actually the day where the Russian Federated Soviet Socialist Republic announced its own sovereignty as a nation state. And this happened while it was still a member of the Soviet Union, the leading member of the Soviet Union. But it was a move towards sovereignty, not long before the Soviet Union collapsed, like within months. And, it was 1990, I believe. And so maybe 18 months maximum. You'll see, I'll put on my Chiron the exact dates. So they will override what it is I'm saying here, because I'm probably making a slight mistake. And it was a nice day. I didn't see any signs of excessive anything. It was just a peaceful day. Everybody was out at their dachas. We had a nice day here. So that is everything for this report, except for maybe 2 or 3 little tidbits of detail. Those are as follows. I made another video yesterday noting that the channel that you normally see these videos on, Seraphim Hanisch, has been changed to Seraphim Hanisch Music. And I've actually created a new channel just for American in Exile videos. And that's where this video is going to be, and all subsequent videos. For you as the viewer, it's not going to make a whole lot of difference, because when I share the videos out across social media, it's just a different channel, but it's still me. But I also do run a couple of other channels. Like I said, there's Seraphim Hanisch Music, and this one contains mostly music that I have either cooperated with or made myself. It's of a non-religious nature. Much of it is electronic, and hopefully there will be more of it that is electronic, both with and without lyrics. And I say here the same thing as I always say: if you like it, listen to it. If you like it, share it with your friends. If you don't like it, share it with people you don't like. Either way it goes, it helps me. If you like me, it helps me build what I'm trying to do here. There are a couple of other channels too. So Seraphim Hanisch Music, and then there's a new one, the Orthodox Music Channel. This is the English side of a dual channel project that I'm working on with a colleague here. Its purpose is to release videos of very well-made recordings of Orthodox Christian church singing. Some of those recordings are mine. Some of them are other people's, and I think over time I hope to develop a very, very large and well-curated collection. One of the things that I often see on YouTube when I look around for Orthodox church singing is very poorly made examples. Poor choirs, poor recording technique, poor sound, unpleasant. And so what I'm trying to do is use my own abilities and work with other people to make something that's different. This will associate with a record label that I'm trying to create also called Orthodox Recordings. And I hope that this builds something, so go check that out also. I'll put links to all of these in the description for this video. The Russian language counterpart for the Orthodox Music Channel is a channel called EccLesiA. And EccLesiA is written in English, but the rest of it is духовной music Ансамбль, written in Russian, and this is curated by my good friend EccLesiA Ансамбль. And she is the conductor of our small singing group called EccLesiA. Sometimes I sing with them. Most of the time I just record them. And so she and I are putting out the videos that EccLesiA makes on both the EccLesiA channel and the Orthodox Music Channel. And the only real difference is that sometimes the graphics and the videos on mine will be in English, and the graphics on hers will be in Russian, and the descriptions for all of our respective videos will lead off in the language that is the first language for the channel. So Orthodox Music Channel is English, and EccLesiA is Russian. And finally, that's it. So, at any rate, thank you to all of you who continue to watch. Please comment, suggest, tell me anything you want. Ask any questions that you want to hear. I'd be happy to hear from anybody. I read. At this point, I don't get very many comments, so you can be very assured that I will read all of them. So by all means, comment and subscribe to my channels. Share them with your friends or dump them on your adversaries. And have a great week, and I hope to see you next week when we meet again. Have a great day. God bless you. God be with you. And enjoy life.